I look like an idiot that came out of a time warp with my wacky, cantankerous, absurd, masochistic dream machine. So I think every person eventually has an itch they have to scratch in life. And for everybody, it's different. It could be something considered a midlife crisis if that comes around at a certain time in life. But everybody's got that. And for me, I love cars. I love building cars. I love racing cars. I love doing that. But my itch I never got to scratch was motorcycles. And I don't mean just riding them, because we had a little dirt bike when we were kids. I never got to get into motocross, never raced them, drove faster bikes, but I wanted to race a motorcycle. So I started looking in classifieds, and the thing that I found out about motorcycle racing, especially weird, eccentric, vintage motorcycle racing like I would like, is it's not well organized by any stretch of the imagination remotely relating to cars, and it's really hard to find stuff unless you're already connected. So I started delving into the nether regions of the internet, trying to find it, and lo and behold, I found a guy running a race bike version of the Honda 350cc four-cylinder bike. It came with another frame, another motor, enough to build a second bike. I bought the whole lot for $2,500. Okay? I've never raced a motorcycle, I've ridden motorcycles, and had it out in the pole barn outside of Tiffin, Ohio. And what I did was I called up Airtrek Streamlining on the West Coast, because they had all the molds to make all the Grand Prix stuff back when. So I ordered two of everything. 2 tanks, 2 seats, 2 fairings. Because what I did was, I had enough parts that I could reconfigure to build a race bike. But then if I got a stock Honda for the street, I had enough parts that I could make a street bike, race bike version that was street legal of my race bike. I kept working on the bike, I got it all kitted out and ready to go. Problem is, even though I had a car racing license, and that's not a problem for me to go do whatever I wanted, I didn't have a motorcycle racing license, which is a totally different thing. So I had to qualify for that to do the race at Mid-Ohio. And I wasn't trying to do this that seriously. I really wanted to scratch that itch. It was a romantic thing. I didn't want to hurt myself, but you know, you got to go after it. And I had my leathers made by Vanson to look vintage, black, black leathers. They came apart here, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get it perforated. I want mine to look old school. So anyway, I was scheduled to go to an event. It's the road race track outside of Pittsburgh, and they were holding like a school day so you could qualify to get your license. I'm like, this is great, I'll go. But the thing was, that morning, you know how you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I got the flu. I'm so sick, I wanna die. That's what happened to me the morning I had to go load up with the truck and trailer to go do this. Except the problem was that was the only school I could go to in time to qualify to do the race I want. So naturally I went. So I show up with this bike. Also, there's no kickstand, and I didn't have the powered roller starters to start the old race bike, and it has no Kickstarter. So I show up and I feel terrible, and I walk my bike up, and there's this little school thing, and there's this older guy with this weird 3-cylinder, 2-stroke, air-cooled bike that's leading the, he's like the school teacher, and we're being respectful. But everybody shows up to the school with modern push-button super bikes. And I go up to the guy, and I look like an idiot that came out of a time warp with my wacky, cantankerous, absurd, masochistic dream machine. And I say to the guy, I'm like, sir, I know we're gonna go out on the track in a minute. Will I have time to get this started and warm it up before we go, or should I do that now and it's warm so it'll start easy when we go? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, we'll get it started. Let's just get school in session. So we sit down and we go through everything, what the flags are, what the procedures are, and everything like this. And the guy suddenly goes, okay, let's go. And I remember it vividly. Every single one of these people in the school throws their helmet on, hops on their modern leader bikes with kickstands, pushes the button and takes off. And I'm like, guys, yeah, I'm stuck in the 60s here. So now I'm running as hard as I can through the pits. It's 95 degrees. I'm in black leathers, full suit, everything, to start this bike that doesn't want to start. I'm like, ah! You jump on it like this to put your weight on it to get traction on the tire and pop the clutch, nothing. And I've never been so miserable. Not only that, but I couldn't get the darn thing to start. I'm running up and down the pits. People are maybe feeling sorry for me or thinking I'm terrible at tuning a bike. So we go through our next session. Same thing happens. Everybody jumps on the bike and goes, but the instructor guy goes to help me with one push. He's like, okay, pushes me once, doesn't start. And they all go out and do their session. And there was only gonna be 3 sessions that day, and I missed both. Worst part is, the weather starts moving in. It was gonna start raining. I decided, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get it started during lunch, and I'm gonna ride it around in the pits to make sure it's all up to temperature and it'll be as best as it can be. And there wasn't gonna be a school session right before it. I'm gonna go to the top of the hill at the pits. And I'm gonna sit on my bike at the top of the hill beforehand, and I'm gonna wait before it's my time to go out so I can go down this big hill and get it started and fire it and go. So that's where I go. And I gotta sit there on the bike for like an hour. It starts raining. Complete downpour, torrential rain. I am sitting on this motorcycle with no kickstand, with the flu, black leathers, sweating to death, torrential rains, helmet fogging up, miserable, absolutely as miserable as you could be. I had taken my helmet off and I sat it down, and I'm holding on the bike and I lean over like this, and I go to get up like this, which wouldn't be a problem, but on an old Grand Prix bike from the 60s, the windscreen really wraps around. It's a bubble, like vacuum form thing, comes way back like this. And I trimmed the end of the windscreen before that day, and it trimmed just fine, but it was brittle enough that there were some like little chips in it. And when I leaned down like this and came back up, the windscreen went like this, and I caught one of the chips in the skin of my forehead, and like an ingrown toenail, it embedded under the skin toward like my eyebrow and eyeball, and then broke off. And I was bleeding a lot into my eye with the rain, with the flu, in these leathers, holding a bike with no kickstand. And I looked around, and there was one guy that's looking at me like, wow, he's having a bad day. And I go, and I motion him over, I'm like, can you hold this bike for a second? I've got a giant piece of plexiglass in my forehead. He's like, dude, you need anything? I'm like, you got a pair of pliers or something? And his like wife handed me a pair of pliers, and I still vividly remember taking these needle nose pliers, looking in the mirror of their truck and grabbing it, because it's basically serrated and going, and you could feel it grabbing everything under your skin on the way out. It's like, whew, that's a big piece of plastic. And I just dropped on the ground. I said, thank you for holding my bike, and went like this to wipe the blood away. And I just grabbed my helmet in the rain and put my helmet on because I figure it'll soak up the blood. I got about 10 minutes to go. I'm like, I'm just gonna start the bike at this point. So I go down the hill and it won't start. So I keep running, and on third time it starts because it's a little bit downhill down there. And I'm just riding around. And it's a loud, obnoxious bike. And I meet everybody, go out on the track. Torrential downpour, whatever. This is a horrible day. There's nothing good about this day. So I got on this, and I've got a little vintage bike, and they got leader bikes, and they're flying along. I beat like one or two guys just because they were total squids. But the funniest part I remember is not just hauling the mail in the rain, and this first time I've been on this track in this old bike, it was fine. But the funniest thing was this turtle. It was raining so much, he decided that that was the time that he needed to cross the racetrack. And I'm like, oh, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna get hurt, and one of us is gonna die because you're basically a moving rock. And every time I came around the track, he was a little further. And it was kind of a boring thing because I was running myself in the race. And every time I came around a lap, I'm like, go, little dude, go, you can make it. And I just kept going. And eventually the turtle made it. I'm like, yeah, dude. So I got my license. Some time had passed, and it came time for the big vintage races at Mid-Ohio. And this is my first motorcycle race, but obviously not my first race. I've been doing cars for some time, so it really wasn't that unusual. It's just different things to worry about. You know, you have a bike, it's a lot smaller than a car. You know, you got to rejet it and such, and I've got to keep bumming starts off some guy that has rollers because I don't have any rollers. And so it's time to go out on the track the first day. I remember somebody said it was going to rain because Mid-Ohio is its own weird microclimate. It always seems to rain or be perfect weather. And the first day it was rain. And all the motorcycle guys said to me, if it's raining, just don't even bother go out. This track is insanely slick. And of course, I ignored that advice completely and went out in the rain. And it was fine. It was slippery. I was sliding around a bit, but you know, getting the lay of the land, doing your thing. I'm very at home in a car, a race car. Doesn't matter what at a road racing track. It's what I love. It's who I am. That's my deal. But I've never felt so out of touch that I did that first day at Mid-Ohio on my race bike. I even remember missing a shift. Like, my brain totally skits out, and there are people I got past, and I was a total mess. And I came back in, and I remember vividly walking from the pits, and I went out to turn one. And you can walk up to the inside of turn one, it's beautiful grass, and you can see people come through it. And I'm having a moment. I'm thinking, what am I doing? Casey, you know how to race. You know how to get around this track. So shut up, stop thinking, and just go ride. I went out and started putting down some lap times. And it was great. And it came time for the race on Saturday. So I'm ready. I think I'm starting like third row. And if this thing stalls, I'm dead. I'm not getting this thing started again. So I remember holding it higher up and I'm like, okay, and they're doing the flag and the guy's getting ready and I'm like, boom, go, bah. I just got on as hard as I could and did like a dirt bike as a kid. The next thing you know, I'm able to get ahead 2 rolls. I'm up to the front of the row, 3 deep going into turn 1. It was a moment where I was like, yeah! I'm like, this is way better than car racing. This is completely insane. And we're on it like this. I had a guy come by like 6 inches, miss my handlebars by like 6 inches and just come by right this. I could have slapped him on the back of the head. The thing that's crazy in a car race, within 5 or 10 laps, if there's 2 or 3 passes, that's a lot of action in a car race. In a motorcycle race, you're gonna get 2 or 3 passes every lap. It was insanity. And there was a pack there and I got through it. And the next thing you know, there's nobody ahead of me. And I didn't have any mirrors on the bike. I don't know if you're supposed to or not, but I didn't, because you can turn around and look. But I'm just on it and going and riding. And after a lap or 2 of this, I'm starting to get kind of paranoid. I'm like, somebody's gonna come bombzine up on me. I am slow. Like, there's no way I should be out here. And I like didn't have enough time to like look around. The craziest thing was, I never expected, I won the race. But there were 2 races that weekend. That was just the first one. And I remember hearing them talk afterward. There was another driver's meeting and they were talking about something and they're like, so we're doing 2 races and the points count and it's the average of the 2 to see who wins for a championship and based on your points through the season. I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I literally don't even know what you're talking about. I just came to race. I didn't figure out till later when I talked to other people, it wasn't just a race at Mid-Ohio. It was the AMA Vintage National Championships. That was the race of the year. So the next day comes and somebody else shows up that their bike wasn't running well. Real fast guy. Again, I get an awesome start. Hopped up to the front row, crazy racing, get on this, coming up on somebody else. But I was back a couple of bikes and I'm trying to pick them up. I'm chasing this guy and I'm getting on it. There's one guy that checked out, like could not touch him. The guy had an awesome built bike, a lot of power in a straight line. It was the last lap and I come through turn 1, under the bridge in Mid-Ohio, going up. And I had a roll on him and I thought I could get him before the keyhole. And I rolled up on him like this and I was able to get on the outside and he dropped back just a little bit. And I just got him like this and I just held it, just went hard that last lap. And for that race on Sunday, I finished 2nd. I was like, okay, cool. All right, well, that was an insane and amazing weekend, especially considering how it started in my horrific school. And what I came to find out is the guy that beat me that day didn't show up to yesterday. So he had 1 first place, and then a DNS. And so I show up, they're doing awards, and it goes 3rd place, 2nd place, and 1st place, Casey Putsch. And I'm like, what? And here I go, stand on the podium, and I'm just like, what? Like, I don't even know what to say. That was the first time way back when that like, I really got to stand on a podium, like I did with karts. But the cars are pretty nonchalant. They're just like, yeah, you race, whatever. But I sit on the podium, they get a microphone. There's a lot of people, and they have you talk. And like, honestly, I was kind of teary-eyed, like a little bit misty-eyed. You know what I mean? And the motorcycle thing was an itch I wanted to scratch. That was a love of mine that goes back for watching On Any Sunday and the guys like from way back in the past that I never experienced, and just sort of built this on something of a whim out in the countryside just because I wanted to ride and race, and ended up winning my class for the AMA Vintage National Championships. And I go home to where I built it and my dad was there. He's like, so how was the race? Well, first of all, I won and then on Saturday and got 2nd, but get this, that was the national championships. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I pulled out an AMA #1 plate. I'm like, I won the national championships. And as my dad did, he's like, and just turns around and walks away. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks, Dad.
Homeowners insurance may just seem like some boring thing that you have to get a mortgage, but it can be a surprising way to actually save a lot of money. Policy Genius is your advocate to do that. They shop your policy and your insurance needs amongst all the major carriers and find you the best deal. In fact, every time it renews, Policy Genius does it all over again. They check everybody else, they make sure you're getting the best deal, and if there's a better deal out there, they switch you for free. Policy Genius can also bundle your homeowner's policy with your car insurance policy and save you even more. Policy Genius has saved their combined auto and home insurance customers an average of $1,127 a year. So visit the link in the description below, tell them a little bit about yourself and your property, and they'll tell you if you're getting the best deal. Be sure to thank them for their support of VINwiki.